Okay, so this week we pick up with vaYiqra. We're in chapter 20, that's Leviticus, verse 11. I want to give you guys a warning here. We're getting into some very, let me say, adult here. If anyone's under the age of 12 or 13, they maybe ought to go color in a coloring book or something. I don't know. But I mean, we're not talking about anything porno or anything like that, but we are talking about very mature adult stuff here. We're going back over it again. It was in the last chapter and a little bit in the previous chapter. This is being more specific on the punishment in this chapter is what it amounts to, as long as you understand what the punishment is. So just be forewarned. Okay, now and we're diving right into this because we hit that at verse 10 last week. My translation was, and a man who commits adultery with with a man's wife, because his adultery was with his neighbor's wife, both will be excommunicated, the adulterer and the adulteress. Okay. Um, this is the one where I point out with the New Testament stuff where they brought this woman before Yeshua and said, hey, she's committed adultery, but they didn't bring the man. And they had built fences around the Torah, if you will, by that point where somebody actually had to see the crime committed, which means that the people who drug her there had to admit that they had seen it or admit that they had not. And if they had not seen it, then there was a problem. If they had seen it, then there was a problem. So they couldn't win for losing with that one. And they never even got that far. Yeshua outsmarted all of the people that were trying to do some trickery here, but it wasn't the trickery that Christians say it was, as the person was never supposed to be put to death in the first place. And because that's the way you hear the Christians say, oh, well, the man and the woman both were supposed to be put to death. No, they weren't. They were supposed to be excommunicated if, in fact, this was the wife of the man's best friend. And that was not even brought up. So it wasn't exactly what the Christians think, but it wasn't that far off either. So this week we began, and I always give the really super literal English translation. And man that he lie down, wife father him, nakedness father him, uncovered death he killed they, both them, blood them in them. Right? And I do this because if you're really going to understand Hebrew, you kind of have to understand it this way, because this is the way we put sentences together particularly in biblical Hebrew. Modern Hebrew is quite different, and it confuses me quite a lot. Because I've purposely stayed away from trying to learn it. I keep thinking, man, maybe I think I could be there for 3 to 6 months and I'd be fine talking to anybody, because I can talk to certain people from Israeli Jews generally. If they're Russian, I can't understand a Russian Jew to save my life. The way they do their vowel sounds and stuff is so bizarre, and their sentence structure is different. It's very, very weird. And the Jews in New York are just almost as bad. I can only understand about half of that, but that's more than I can understand from the Russians. So there are different dialects of Hebrew, in case you don't know. But my biggest issue is that I only know Bible words. So if you start talking about, something technical, though I'm a technical person, I'm probably not going to understand it if you're saying it in Hebrew. Okay, anyway, so it starts off with Va'ish Asher, the man that Yishkav, that lays down the primary stock, has the power of bending, inclining oneself to lay oneself down, right? That's what the dictionary says. Et Eshet, with now this is a word can be used can be translated as woman or wife. It generally is more connected to the wife than it is to just a woman. But it literally means woman. It's just there's, in any language, you have more than one word that can be used to describe the female gender. Well, Hebrew has the same thing. And this one is more associated with a wife than it is just a woman. And I don't know if I should say it that way. I just can't think of any other way to say it. But you follow what I'm saying. We're not just calling this person a female. Although it could be, we'll find out real soon. This says with the Eshet, then it says Aviv, so it's the wife of the mother, wife of the father, rather. Av, the father, Aviv, his father. And then it says Ervat, which is nakedness, metaphorically the nakedness of a land. Like a desert is naked for the most part. Nothing's growing there. It doesn't have plants and trees, and that's what would make it unnaked. And if you have a dog or a cat that has no fur, they call that a naked dog. They used to call the dogs that were really, really short-haired, they used to call them naked as well. I don't know if y'all knew that, but when I was growing up, that's what they were called, was naked. But now that we actually have dogs that have no fur and cats that have no fur, I think that's changed a little bit. So anyway, so it says Ervat, nakedness, Aviv. So we didn't say uncovered before that? No, so it's with his father, and it's nakedness, his father, and then it says Gilah. He has uncovered the nakedness of his father. Probably going to recognize that it's an idiomatic phrase, but it can be used literally. A lot of idioms are like that. I buy ink by the gallon can be an idiom for I write a lot, but it can also be the person who owns a print shop may actually buy ink by the gallon. You know what I'm saying? So idioms can be used literally. So we need to figure out, is this literally the uncovering of the nakedness of the wife? You can say, well, if he lied down with her, then yes. But that doesn't generally mean that it's literal, that it can still be idiomatic, as we'll discover. Then it says, Mut Yumetu. This is a little change out here in Mut Yumat, but it's the same thing. He, die, they, basically. It just made it they instead of he. And that's not important in Hebrew, as you noticed, probably in the last sentence, I think it was. It said Mut Yumat, which is die, he, die, and it was talking about the man and the woman. So, and again, not their death, their excommunication. And here it's in plural. No one's actually sure why some things are said in plural and some things are not. There's people who will say, oh, I know for sure. But the truth is, no one can actually be sure why some things are said in plural and some things are not. It doesn't seem to change the meaning, so that's okay with me. Then I don't have to be confused about it, what it means, and that's the main thing. Then it says Shenehem, both of them. Demehem. So it's already said die, they, die. Then it says Shenehem, both of them. Then it says Demehem. So that's bloods them. So their blood is probably how we would say it. Bam, which is not a word. It's a bait followed by a mem, and it means in them. So our translation is pretty straightforward. And a man who lies down with his father's wife has uncovered the nakedness of his father. They will be excommunicated. Both of them are punished for their guilt. That last thing, blood them, in them, that was an idiom. And it means that they're punished for their guilt. Because remember, the word here is blood them, in them. Their blood is in them. So the idiom is their blood is in them, and that means they are punished for their guilt. You guys with me so far? Here we are introduced to a new idiom. If a man lies down with his father's wife, that's the idiom, well, that's not the idiom. That's the meaning of the idiom. It means the idiom is nakedness, father, his uncovered. So he has uncovered the nakedness of his father, is how we would say the idiom in English. But that's an idiom, and it means that someone has laid with his father's wife. That is to say, if a man has sex with his father's wife, it is said that he has uncovered the nakedness of his father. There are those who then connect this verse with Noah and his son Ham, because it says that about Ham, that he uncovered the nakedness of Noah, of his wife. So was that literal, or was that idiomatic? Well, in this case, it's kind of both on this verse. If you think about it, it literally happened. It's said idiomatically, but it means that it literally happened. However, if this did happen with Ham, then either Noah or God would have to have kicked Ham out from the family. He would have had to been kicked completely out of having anything to do with that family, would have been run off. Does anybody remember the story? Do we remember what happened to him? So that's what it's going to be based on. If he stayed with the family and his wife and his kids stayed with the family, then it would have been literal in that he saw his mother or stepmom. I don't remember the whole story, but that would just mean that he actually saw her naked, and that's not a good thing. But if on the other, that's if he stayed with them, then he just saw her naked, and that wasn't good, and he got punished for that because he should have known not to go into the tent. On the other hand, if they really did get together and have adultery, and we know this if he was kicked out from the family. So if you want to know, did he really do this? All you have to do is read the story. If it tells you that he was kicked out from the family, then you know that he lay with his father's wife. If, on the other hand, that's not what happened, then he just saw her naked, right? So in the verse that we just looked at, this is saying if this has actually taken place where someone has laid down with another man's wife, right? Well, with his father's wife. If that has happened, then they are both to be cut off. So that's, I feel like I confused all of that, but all I'm trying to say is, you know, from the context of the story, whether somebody just saw someone naked or someone has actually slept with his stepmom, right? That's how you know. All right, verse 12. Very literal English is, and man that he lie down, daughter-in-law he, dead he killed they, both them perversion made they, blood them in them. So at least the last idiom is easy enough to pick up on, right? So the ish asher yishkav, just like the last verse. So, and a man that lays down, it says et kalato. So that's with the daughter-in-law, with his daughter-in-law. Mut yumetu. So here it's being said in plural. Die, they die. Shenehem, both of them. Tevel, guilty. Asu, which is they've done something. Demehem, blood them, their blood, bomb in them. So a man who has sex, who lies down with his daughter-in-law, they are both excommunicated. Die he, die they. They are both excommunicated. Both of them are become guilty. Become is the word I did for they did something. Both of them have done something to make themselves guilty. So I wrote it, both of them are guilty. They are punished for their guilt. So they're excommunicated as their punishment, and they're being excommunicated because of the guilt that they brought upon themselves. They're not being punished for the guilt of somebody else. They're being punished for what they've done. All right. So where are we? 13. A man that he lie down male from lie down woman, abomination made they, both them dead and kill he blood them in them. So again, we've already had this verse. We've already gone through this, but this is getting more specific about what you do about their guilt, right? So it says, Ve'ish asher yishkav, just like the last two verses, and a man who lies down, et zachar, that's a male, that's a word for male, as opposed to female. A man who lies down with a male, mish keveh, and then it says, lay down isha, that's with a woman, to eva, that's an abomination. Anything that is contrary to biblical or religious law is called an abomination. We use that word to make it worse. That's, instead of saying that's bad, that's abominable. We use it to add emphasis in English, but the truth is they're not adding emphasis here with the word. They're adding emphasis by the repeating of it. Asu, so there's that made word. And then, of course, it has the they, by putting the vav at the end of asa, changing it to asu, it's made, they made, is how we would say it in English, but in Hebrew it's made they. So they've done something. And then it's shenehem, both of them, mut umato. So again, mut umat is how it's been said all the way up until these last couple of verses, and now it's changed a while ago into the plural, and this ends in the plural, but they've taken the plural from the center away, but it's all still means the same thing. So instead of die, he die, or die, he die, they, which is how you say it in plural in Hebrew, now it's he die, they. So it's a third way to say exactly the same thing. And the reason for these changes, not clear. It could be that when the Masoretes came up with this system, they got a little confused. It really could be, because the vowel sounds have been added. They have been identified by the Masoretes. Those are the ones who came up with the way these things are being pronounced by me. And they could have just gotten confused about some things. And then again, it could be that, say Moshe wrote a bunch of this and then he got deterred by something else, or maybe went to bed and went to sleep and got up the next evening after all of his Moses work was done. He picked back up and maybe he just spelled it differently. Who knows? I mean, it could be a lot of different things. Just throwing something out there to see what sticks and what doesn't. Then it says, Demehem, so their blood, bomb in them. And a man who has sex, who lays down with, a man who has sex with a male, after having sex with a woman, both man and male, I put that in there in the little cursive letters, are made unclean. Because it says both, but both could be, well, is it the man and the woman, or is it the man and the man? I'm going to tell you how I know it's the man and the man and not the man and the woman here in a minute. Anyway, both of them are made unclean. They will be excommunicated. So die, he die, they. Both of them are punished for their guilt. Both of them blood them in them. So both are punished for their guilt. Now, it's going to be helpful. Do the picture-in-picture thing, if you will. The picture in picture. You just press the little play button as long as it's set on the right thing. Okay. I'm going to have to turn this way so I can see it. So the English translations usually say, if a man also lies with a male this is really important, as he lies with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. They shall surely be put to death. Their blood shall be upon them. Right? This is the Hebrew text that would be needed in order for this to happen. The problem is that's not the Hebrew text. So I'm going to take a little bit of drink before I start choking here. In order for it to say what the English text just said, I have to add this to the front of it, to Zachar. I have to add im to it. In order for it to say as a woman, I have to add the kaf to the front of it. And then I'm going to have to add the vav to the end of it. You see what's happening here? This red stuff is not in the Hebrew text. But for it to say, if a man lies down with a male as he lies down with a woman, the Hebrew text would have to look like this. It does not. To say with a male, the Hebrew text would, well, I kind of already said that. This is im, the word here. That's im. It'd have to say im zachar, or it'd have to say im ish. It could say man with man or man with male. It doesn't make any difference. But it would have to do one of these two things if you want to say with a man. To say as he lay down with a woman, as he lay down, the Hebrew text would have to, as I said, have to be ke shachavo, which it does not say. It would have to be that. So you have a bit of a problem there. Now, you can go back to me if you want to, or they can read that. I don't care. The last three Hebrew words are all masculine plural, which means, and that's not determined by the vowel sounds that are added to it. That's determined by the letters yod and mem sofit added to the end of these words that makes it masculine plural. So it doesn't matter what Masoretes did or didn't do. All three of these last words are masculine plural. That means that the penalty is for the two men, and there is no penalty for the woman, at least not in this part of the sentence. So this verse, while clearly showing that a man cannot have sex with a woman after he had sex with a man, does not condemn homosexuality or homosexual sex. It doesn't. The verse does not say as with a woman. It says after having sex with a woman. Thus, there is no condemnation of or limit to homosexuality. There is, however, a condemnation of bisexuality. The text is telling us to pick a preference and stay true to it. That's all it's doing. So no, there is no biblical law against homosexuality in the Hebrew Bible. There are none. When you look at the New Testament, there aren't any in there either, except to the degree that it has been added to the English text through horrific translational efforts. Don't know why they felt so important about that. It could be that the Catholicism came along right around the time that the Roman Empire was utterly imploding on itself. It was almost completely over with at that point. And particularly the bisexuality that went on for the previous 200 years, and it got worse and it got worse and all that kind of stuff, as far as they literally got to the point where they had it was being pushed on the children and stuff like that, like what's happening in America today. But that was kind of the last straw for one of the big things that happened in Rome that just finally took it to the ground. And it could be that the Catholic Church, as they were forming, saw that happening and felt like, well, we need to stave this off. Who knows? I mean, whether that had anything to do with why they decided to change the English Bible. I mean, that comes in the 11 and 1200s. So that's a long time after Catholicism started. So God knows what happened between those times. I don't know if it was passed down through Catholicism or if that was a new thing in the 1100s. But the translation of Romans chapter 1 there toward the end of it is it's ungodly what they did with that, especially because the message that was actually written there is so utterly important for believers in God to know. It was all about idol worship and had nothing to do with any of this. But look what it led to. It has just utterly destroyed so many families over the centuries. Anyway, let's move on. I talked way more about that than I wanted to. All right, so our next verse, and man that he took, woman and mother her, wickedness she, with fire he burned they, with he and them, and not shall be wickedness in midst you. That sounds pretty bad, doesn't it? Ve'ish asher yikach. So now it changes. And we're not talking about lying down with somebody. We're talking about taking someone. To take, to stick together, to adhere, to take for oneself, especially to take a wife. And in this case, it's exactly what's being said. If a man takes a wife, et isha, so he takes this wife with this woman, ve'et, and ima, and her mother. So he takes a woman as a wife, and he takes her mother as a wife. That's what's being said here. The daughter and the mother have both been taken in marriage. That's all I really need to say. It's what it says. Zima, wickedness. Uh, in a bad sense, it's used of counsel when people get together and decide something. And in that sense, it's a bad counsel. It's wickedness, a wicked deed, mischief, purpose, thought, wickedness of the mind, especially used in speaking of sins of uncleanness, i.e., that which is forbidden by the Torah. That's the only context you have in the Hebrew Bible with when it comes to evil and wickedness. That's going to be something that's against the law of God. There is no other option here. So then it says heave, which can be she or the feminine for the word it. It is wickedness. Not that she is wicked, but it is wickedness. Ba'esh. So the thing that gets looked so many times in the translation of Hebrew is this word. This is esh. It's the word that mimics the sound of fire esh, like if you pour a libation offering, a liquid offering onto the metal, heated metal, it makes that shh sound, or frying grease or whatever. Hopefully you know what I'm saying. But what's missed here is that when fire is being spoken of about a person, it's not actual fire, it's passion. It's the passion of the soul and the heart and the spirit. That is a hard and fast grammar rule in Hebrew. So, yis refu, it's literally he burned they. So they burn with it. They burn with this passion, with this, and it's not saying this is a good thing. Oto with it, ve'ehen, and they or and them, velo, and not tia, not it shall be. This is not allowed. Zima, so we go back to wickedness, same word as before. Betochem is in the midst of you. This wickedness is now in the midst of the people. So our translation, and it is wickedness for a man to take in marriage a woman and her mother. He is consumed by his passions, and it, speaking of the passions, consumes them. But there shall be no wickedness in your midst. Pretty clear that God does not want this to happen among his people. There is no punishment given out by this verse, just the command not to allow this. Now, Onkelos by vaYiqra, they said, and of course they're writing about Onkelos, they said Onkelos translates the Bible's yikach literally, even though it obviously means more than take. So in other words, the word he used means take, and it doesn't mean wife or marriage. So they were pointing that out, that talk about whitewashing something here. He took these two women. Well, what's that supposed to mean? He should have translated a little bit different to say take them in marriage, because that's literally what the Hebrew text says. So something gets missed. If you're using the Onkelos and not looking at the actual Hebrew text, which I don't understand why synagogues do that. We have the actual words written by Moshe, and we go and read the words of someone who lived in the 400s. Yeah, the 400s. That's when this work was completed, about 300 years after Onkelos died. But whatever. Let's say he wrote it somehow in his death. Why you would go and read his work instead of God's work, why his would even be important, is I just have to scratch my head about that one. I don't understand it. Okay, let's look at verse 15. And man that he give copulation, he with livestock, dead he dies, and livestock shall kill they. So he's going to die because the livestock's going to kill him. Well, that would be very understandable. You guys get what's being said here. The ish asher yiten. So, and a man that gives, and that's to cause to receive. You know, it's like I used to say it more often than I do these days, but a man once said he was going to give us a bunch of money, give the ministry a whole bunch of money. And he even pulled open this little box and showed us all this money that was in it. And we never saw him again. He did not cause us to receive that money. So he did not give us that money. So it's give like what you think of. So the man who gives. And then our next word is shekavto. I'm just going to say copulation. I think most of you know what that means. Then it says be vehema. Oh, to an animal. And it's not any particular animal. It's used mostly, I think, in the Bible of cattle and sheep, but it really just, sorry, it's really just the word for animal. Sorry, I don't mean to stop when something's so gross, but then it says mut yumat. So now we're all the way back to mut yumat. Die, he dies, or dead, he dead. You can say it either way. Man, dead, he dies probably be the most, would be the most literal way to say that. Then it says ve'et ha behema, and the livestock, not all of his livestock, but the particular, that's why et, because it's like an arrow. That's what I do when I translate Hebrew. When et comes up, I just draw an arrow, because that's actually what it is. It's like an arrow that points to something. It highlights something. It makes something specific. So it's that particular livestock, whatever that may be. Ta harogu. They shall slay it. Someone needs to kill it. The animal. So, and a man who has sex with livestock, he will be excommunicated. die he die, and they, the children of Israel, shall destroy the animal. And you're not talking about slaughtering an animal and eating it. God said, destroy this animal. Now, Onkelos vaYiqra says, you must kill the animal, explains that it is not a punishment of the animal, but it is a fine imposed on the owner of the animal. Knowing the day, and I guess because some people say, well, that animal was innocent, whatever. So they have to say, well, it's not punishing the animal; it's a fine against the guy. Okay, whatever. Then it goes on. The owner will be more careful as regards to his beast, will guard it and never lose sight of it, just as he watches his household, for people fear the loss of their property as much as their own life. Some even more. Maimonides could not rationally accept the notion that the animal provoked the situation. Well, no, it didn't. I guess that's why they had to say it that way, because, well, that poor innocent little animal. I would have to agree that it's a fine against the guy, because if he's being excommunicated, he's going to take all of his animals with him and all of that. And so they just destroy the animal, and then hopefully that guy will get the message and the rest of his animals won't suffer the same fate, maybe. I don't know. Okay. So let's look at 16. And woman, that you shall come near to all livestock to lie down her and slay you, the woman and the livestock, dead he die they, blood them in them. Okay. So we start off with the Isha and a woman, Asher, that Tikerav, it's Karab is your word. It's to approach, to come near, used of men and poetically of things, especially of time. It is used of God, is said to draw near when he aids the afflicted. People are said to draw near when they're bringing an offering. It's what you think of. It's you're going near something, you're going to something. If you stand up from your chair and you walk over to the table, you draw near to that table. It's exactly what you would think. Then it says El, which is to, Kol Behema, to any of the livestock. Then it says Le Riva, to lie down, and it's in the end, it has the feminine ending because it's speaking of this woman who goes near to an animal and lies down. Ota, so that's like a pointer. Then it says Veharagto. They're not going to go into any more detail than that. And you will slay. That's to kill. Et Haisha, the woman. Ve'et and ha behema, and the livestock. Mut yumato, die he die. Demehem, well, that's not even in. That's not even in. It's not even in the feminine. Demehem, blood them, bomb in them. So what are we saying here? And a woman who shall come near to any of the livestock to have sex with them, you, speaking to the people, are to drive this woman immediately from your midst. That's how you slay this woman, is to drive her immediately from your midst. This woman and the livestock are to be sent out from the land. They are punished for their guilt. Notice something different here. The woman and the livestock are sent out from the land. The animal is not killed here like it would be had a man committed the same crime. The difference is important in that this woman is sent out with the animal. She may sell it to start a new life, or eat it, or trade it for lodging. God's law sends the man out of the land with nothing but what is his. He doesn't get to keep that animal. That's where they get this idea that it's a fine. God adds the animal to whatever the woman may own, which is probably nothing more than the clothing on her back, which will no doubt be very little. And like I just said, and since there will not be much, the animal is given to the woman to help her out. That's not said specifically, it's speculation on my part, but you got to remember that in this time, especially, women had nothing and owned nothing for the most part. So when a woman is sent out immediately and has no help, she still gets mercy from God, and that she's sent out with this animal so that, like I said, she can the animal and get started in a new life somewhere else, because she's just ended her life where she was. Let's compare that to Job 5:2. For the foolish are slain by anger, grief, frustration. That's from your Hebrew word. It means anger, grief, frustration. And jealousy, which this word here, kana, is jealousy. It's of sexual passions. It's of religious zeal. It's used of envy and wrath. Then it says, so the foolish are slain by, let's just say, anger and jealousy, and are put to death those who are, and the word they're using here is gullible or simple-minded. No one is physically being slain or put to death in any way. This verse speaks of a state of mind and the negative effect certain attributes can have on someone. I hope you get why I'm saying let's make that comparison, because it literally says that they're put to death. But how is someone who's dead gullible or simple-minded or easily persuaded, easily deceived? If you want to go back and read Job chapter 5, that's verse 2 of it. You'll see there's no death there. Anyway, yeah, we've got time, because it's kind of a big one. Let's go on to 17. And man that he took, sister he, daughter father him, or daughter mother he, and saw nakedness, and she you shall see nakedness he, mercy he, and will cut off they to eyes children people's nakedness, sister he, uncovered guilt he bear. So it starts off with the ish asher yikach. So we've had these words before. So a man who takes, going to be et achoto, his sister. A man who marries his sister. Probably this word, what's ach, achot. It's a sister. It properly signifies an own sister born of the same parents. But it's also used of female relatives, kinswoman, as it were. So it's not directly the sister, but then it says bat, and that gets really specific. Aviv, so it's the daughter of that man's father. So there can be no doubt here as to whether it was just a kinswoman, a second cousin, whatever. This is the daughter of his father. His direct sister. So it could be a half sister. Maybe the father is remarried, the mother's remarried, but it's the daughter of his father. So it could be a half sister even. Then it says O, which is how you say or in Hebrew. This, oh, that, Then it says vat, which is bat, it's daughter. You know what's next? Emo, daughter of his mother. So if it's the same mom and dad, that's your full-blooded sister. And if the mother and the father are both separate, have divorced and have married, and they have half sisters, it makes no difference. If he marries either a direct sister or a half sister, that's who we're talking about. Ve'ra'ah. So now it's saying, and to see, and saw what? Et ervata. You remember that word, the nakedness. Vehi. So it's and she or and it. Because remember, we use the word it. It was this, it was that. But ours has no gender. In Hebrew, when we translate something as it has a gender. And so he is we would think of the word he as the masculine gender and she as the feminine gender. So in English, it doesn't really matter much, but in Hebrew, it does. So this is in she. Tir'eh. That's from that same word, we just to see something. Et ervata. So she saw nakedness. Chesed. This is generally used of desire, intense love, and a good sense, zeal toward anyone, love, kindness, those sort of things. Benevolence, benefit, mercy, pity. There's, all kinds of stuff. In a bad sense, though, it's zeal in a bad sense. It's love in a bad sense. It's envy. It's reproach. Right? Because every Hebrew word does this. You have your positive and your negative. You have your good and your bad. All right. So the opposite, normally you'd say of this word, it's an eager pursuit of someone stemming from an intense, burning, passionate love and desire for them. But what if you're a stalker? And these are you have an eager pursuit of someone stemming from your stalker passion and your stalker desires. You follow what I'm saying? And so it's the same thing, only in a really bad way, right? So then we say who, which can be he or it. We'll figure all that out. And it says ve nichretu. He will be cut off, they, and will cut off, they. Is literally how that would break down. So they're cut off, separated from the people. Le'ene, from the eyes, so it's to the eyes. B'nai, the children. I guess amam, of the people, the peoples, it's in plural. Ervat, nakedness. It's your word there. Achoto, sister, his sister is how we would say it. Gila has been uncovered. Avono, so guilt, he. Yisa, guilt he will bear. It's, you ever heard someone say, bear your cross? You're bearing the weight, and because it's asa, it's to lift up, to carry away. You're bearing the weight of something, and so you will bear your guilt. You bear the weight of your. They're saying it a little bit different here, but it's essentially the same thing. And then we have. That is the end of that. So let's look at what it says. And a man who takes his sister, the daughter of his father or the daughter of his mother, and has sex with her, and sees her nakedness. which is to say, and they have sex. And let's see, I'm not really sure how I should say this in English. And a man who takes his sister, the daughter of his father or the daughter of his mother, and has sex with her, and she has sex with him, don't know why it's said that way, but that's really what it's saying. It is reprehensible. They will be excommunicated because that's and will cut off they to eyes, children, people. So they've made this a little bit longer of a idiom than normal. Then it says, because they had sex, they are punished for their guilt. Guilt he bear. So this is another way of saying the same thing. The idioms have been reworded in this verse. Changes like this are made to break up the monotony of constantly using the same terms. It's the only reason why it's done. The phrase it is reprehensible comes from the word chesed, which means an eager and ardent desire. Yeah, I already said all that. Onkelos vaYiqra by Drauzine and Wagner said, we stated that takes frequently means marriage. How is it possible that a community would allow a brother and sister to marry? Nachmanides pointed out that sees her his nakedness, however you want to look at that, because it says sees her in one place and it says nakedness in another. So he's saying one or the other. Uncovering nakedness, come upon, lie with, and know are all euphemisms for sexual relations. What's odd about that, he's right, but what's odd about that is that this is the 11 or 1200s that Nachman is 1200s that Nachman is saying this. Isn't it odd that they're just now figuring that out? Why is that so? It's so because in the 400s, when the Onkelos translation was completed, somewhere between then and the 1100s, the Jews had stopped relying on the text of the Hebrew Bible in Hebrew and had begun to rely upon the Aramaic text of the Onkelos. Why? Because they didn't speak Hebrew. Most of the sages, once you get past the 400s, 500s CE, most of them did not speak Hebrew. They had never been in Israel. They were not raised in the old way of Judaism. In fact, by the time these guys came along in the 11 and 1200s, Judaism just almost didn't even exist where they lived. And so a lot of them, particularly Rashi, stole most of what he came up with as this is how Jews are supposed to live, stole it from the Christians, well, from the Catholics, because he clearly recognized the stuff that the Catholics were doing, they had stolen from Judaism. And so that's not a bad approach when you don't have anything else to go by. Problem is, the Onkelos translation wiped away all of Jewish thought. It was very literal. Everything was just literal. That's why these people got to a point where they thought people had to be murdered and animals had to be, well, I shouldn't say that about the animals. That actually is true. But that the people had to be murdered, but they couldn't figure out how to kill these people because they couldn't tell, well, how do you stone somebody? It just says stone, but it says stone them in a stone. How are you supposed to do that? And how are they supposed to die? They die. There's nothing specific about how they're supposed to die. And then here it's talking about what God's going to do to them after they're dead that you don't do to dead people. You do that to alive people. Things just didn't make sense. And so because they became so literal. And so they started picking up on this Christian stuff and Catholic stuff anyway. It's before Christianity, but they started picking up on all that sort of stuff and started trying to rebuild Judaism. And so now when you're reading something, the Hebrew New Testament, what you're reading is the stuff that came from these men who knew nothing about biblical Judaism, literally nothing. They couldn't tell you there was a couple of them who actually had done sacrifices and had learned some things about sacrificing, but Rashi wasn't one of them. He didn't have a clue. You could tell he was a city boy. And I've pointed that out at least on one occasion that I remember, because he didn't know, he was trying to talk about what happens in a sacrifice. And he'd obviously never done it because he didn't know what he was talking about. That's what made it so obvious. So you've got a real breakdown in Judaism. And in modern Judaism, people don't realize just how far away from biblical Judaism that they are. Anyway, I'll give you that rant for free. I have run out of time. It's, let's say it's been real. Not so sure. Certainly hasn't been real fun. We do this. This is part of the law. So shalom, shalom, everybody.
The blessing, Be'ivrit. Yevarecha Yahweh beyish merecha. Ya'er Yahweh panai v'lecha vihunecha. Yisa Yahweh panai v'lecha v'yasim lecha shalom. And in English, may Yahweh cause you to lie down so that you may rest. May he touch and caress you. May he prepare you for what is ahead. May he watch over you. May he keep you from harm. May he cause goodness to grow in you and take away the bad. May he arrange your life and cause you to flourish. May he cheer you up and gladden your heart. May he cause his light to shine through you. May he show you tenderness, favor, and love in his presence. May he show you kindness and be delicate towards you. May he show you his generosity, mercy, compassion, and desire for you as it comes forth from the depths of his soul. May he lift you out of your pit and deliver you from the things that hold you prisoner. May he draw you to his chest and cast his eyes on yours. May he show you his love and desire for you as he cradles you in his arms. May he bear your punishment and pardon you of your sin. May he take you for his bride. May he establish a foundation in you. May he place his name on your heart and mind and make your body his temple. May you be his treasure. May you always be on his mind. May he draw you near and comfort you when you are afraid. May he assure you there is nothing to fear because he is with you. May you and all that concerns you be at peace because he is. Amen.